Hello everyone, welcome to WCN World News. I'm Andy Klein. Well, Japan's state secrecy bill is set to take effect later this year. The bill could jail journalists as well as whistleblowers simply for doing their job. WCN caught up with the main person in charge of the state secrecy bill, Masako Mori, and we asked her why there is no defense for whistleblowers or the public right to know. We also asked her if Eric Snowden played a factor in the creation of this bill. Stay tuned.
恐縮ございます。ご担当の中にはその秘密保護法の推進ということだったのでございます。成立ということだったのでございますが、いくつか秘密保護法に抜けてたものがあったのではないかと思います。というふうに多くの批判家が言っているわけでございます。内部告発者の保護。内部告発者の保護、そして知る権利の重要性、そしてまた場合によっては、国のその安全保障よりはやっぱりその情報の公開性の方の価値が高い、そういうような原則が抜けているのではないかというふうに言われているのでございますが、こういう批評についてどう思いますでしょうか。そして前回も来られましたときに私も質問したんでございますが、そのスノーデン氏について聞いたんでございますが、その時お答えをいただけなかったのでございますが、スノーデン氏についてものお考えについてもお願いできますでしょうか。So your question about Mr. Snowden was that he was in. Sorry.
Was the Snowden case a factor in creating?
そうですね。今回の秘密保護法のその成立にそのスノーデン氏のその事件が関係したかどうかということでございますね。
はい、ですね、女性活躍のプレゼンですので、ちょっと秘密法の方は簡単にお答えしますが、もし答え足りないと思ったらまた終わった後詳しくご説明をしたいと思います。まず秘密保護法についてはですね、各国の制度をですね、詳しく研究をして制度を構築いたしました。また成立後ですけれども、5月にアメリカの方に行って、さらに関係者にお会いしたり、秘密のチェックの第三者機関の部屋の中まで入らせていただいて、調査をしてまいりましたが、世界の中でもしっかりとした制度ができたというふうに自負をしております。まず第三者機関がこの国の秘密指定をチェックするというシステムはアメリカ以外他の国にはありません。日本ではそのアメリカの制度を導入するとそれ以上にですね、知る権利についてですね、各国にない条文まで書き込んでですね、その保護を明確にしています。そして内部告発者の保護についても、例えばアメリカにおいても他の法律、内部告発者保護法で保護されているわけですが、我が国でも同じようにちゃんと法律がありまして、それの適用を受けるというふうにしています。また国によってはそのようなさまざまな他の法律から独立した別のエリアにトップシークレットの指定というのは安全保障上別のエリアに持っていくんですが、私は法律家ですけれども、日本の場合はですね、情報公開法やそれから国の公文書管理法、それから今言った内部告発者の保護法というものと同じ法体系の中に入っていますので、すべての法律の適用があるということですから、すべての法律によって、もう知る権利、その他の権利が守られているということです。このことをですね、アメリカにも行って視察をして、さらに意を強くしたわけでございますが、このことによってですね、日本の国民にですね、よく分かってもらうような説明をですね、さらに深めていく必要があるということは認めます。
Thank you very much. Today I came here to talk about women's issues, so I will only briefly touch upon your question in regard to the Designated Secrets Protection Bill. If my answer is insufficient, please speak to me afterwards, and perhaps I can talk about it in more detail. In regard to establishing this law, before we did that, we studied in quite great detail the laws, similar laws in other nations. And after passing this bill in May, I visited the United States, spoke with different people in this field, and as a result, I felt an even renewed, strengthened resolve or conviction that the law that we passed was a correct law or an appropriate law. We even were able to visit in the United States the room or the facility where a third-party organization would check the actual implementation of the bill, and we believe that following the example of the United States, the law that we put into place was quite appropriate. What I mean by this is that in no other country in the world except the United States and Japan is there a provision for this kind of secrecy law to be checked by an outside or third party. As a result, we believe that the rights that you mentioned, for example, the people's right to know, has been very seriously, very solidly protected as a result. And in fact, we have included such phraseology about the people's right to know in the actual law. In other nations of the world, quite often there is a similar secrecy, secrets designated secrecy protection law, and other rights are protected in various other laws. However, in Japan, we have taken an approach similar to the United States in that there are a legal sort of framework or a set of laws that cover the rights of citizens. For example, the information disclosure law, a law that covers the management of national information or national archival information. Also, there's a law that protects whistleblowers. Since all of these different laws are part of the same legal framework, we believe that we have actually, in principle, been able to protect all of the rights that you have mentioned. And as I mentioned earlier, because after visiting the United States, I do believe that we have certainly made the appropriate steps. What is missing, however, and this I do recognize as part of the reason for your question, is that we have not made enough efforts or enough adequate efforts, or we've not been successful enough in being able to convey this information correctly to the population.
はい、でスノーデン氏の事件でございますけれども、個別の事件がこの法律の制定に影響したということはございません。この法律のできる背景というのは、まず民主党政権がありまして、その時代にですね、審議会ができて、そこで条文の基礎が作られました。その前に自民党政権の時からこれは必要であるということで、かなりの研究がされてきたということで、政権をまたいでですね、必要性、どこの国にもある法律でございますので、日本に作る必要性というものは認識されていたと思います。私も自民党の中で、まだ野党の時ですけど、私はその自民党の中の安全保障の PT におりまして、この研究をしておりましたので、担当大臣になったのだと思いますけれども、かなり歴史ある検討がなされてきて、一つの個別の事件が契機になったわけではございません。ちなみに国会中ですね、ある野党議員がですね、条文の詳しいコンメンタールを持ってきて、こんなコンメンタールを発見したと、森大臣はこれを隠していたのかと言って、私に詰め寄ったわけでございますが、それは民主党政権時代に作られたコンメンタールでございまして、私どもが作ったのは民主党政権のさらにそれを直して、さらに知る権利等の保護を入れてますので、別のコンメンタールであります。そのぐらい民主党政権でも準備をしていたという長い歴史のある背景があるということです。
So, in regard to your question about Mr. Snowden, there was no one specific incident that led to the formation or formulation of this law. To give you some background, the law had been worked upon by the previous administration, which was the Democratic Party of Japan-led administration. During that period, they had even actually set up a study group, of experts who had drafted the fundamental draft wording of a bill. So, and even before the DPJ-led administration began this kind of work, successive LDP-led administrations had talked about the fact that some kind of law needed to be eventually produced. And this was because all countries of the world have similar laws, and it was only natural that Japan would eventually have to have a law of this nature. In fact, when the LDP was was an opposition party, I was an LDP member, and I was part of the PT or project team to oversee this matter. And that is probably the reason that I was chosen as the state minister to oversee the passage of this law. So again, to go back to your original question, there was no one single single particular incident that led to this law. In fact, when we were debating this bill in the Diet session, one of the opposition members came and brought a copy of the bill and waved it into the air and said, Minister Mori, do you know that there is this commentado, which apparently means annotation, that is very problematic? Are you aware of this wording? We looked into it and we realized that that annotation had come from the DPJ-led administration working team, in other words, and we corrected it. What I'm pointing out here is that this is not just one administration suddenly producing a bill in a very short amount of time. It is something that has been worked upon by successive administrations over a very long period of time.
That was Misako Mori responding to our question of why there is no defense for whistleblowers or the public right to know. We also asked her if Eric Snowden was a factor in the creation of the Japanese state secrecy bill. If you would like to find out more information on the state secrecy bill, you can visit www.WCN-tv.com for an in-depth analysis. Thank you so much for tuning in. We'll see you next time.